Hi, so I'm Helen Dro. I work at Digital Science in the consultancy team, and I'm here to chair the session on diversity in research. So you're not without knowing that research still likes representation for minorities, be it gender, race, or ability. Any other workplace, the issue appears at multiple stages, either awareness, recruitment, and retention. At Digital Science, we have been concerned for a while by the lack of diversity. To address awareness, we have used automated tools to identify the gender of unbalanced researchers across different universities in the UK and fields, or from the top 100 Altmetric researchers. Recruitment is often the bottleneck of diversity issues. Recognizing this, Digital Science acquired Seismic Job Seeker, a diversity promoting recruiting platform for the biopharmaceutical industry. So this session will particularly focus on what can be done to recruit Black researchers and what platform like Seismic can do to recruit more broadly. So we have two great speakers today. Elizabeth Wu, co-founder of Seismic, who will describe how Seismic can help bring diversity in research, and Winston Morgan, Dr. Winston Morgan, reader in toxicology and clinical biochemistry at University of East London, will present his vision to bring more diversity in research. Elizabeth, to you.
Thank you very much for the intro, Helena. I'm just going to share my screen now. Oh, sorry, Helen.
That's okay. I probably forgot the doctor.
All right. So today I'm going to talk about inclusive hiring in the sciences, and we'll be speaking about it from a U.S. perspective and the types of representation and challenges that we have here in the U.S. I know that Winston will also be going into the in more detail about the challenges of diversity in the US as well, and in different STEM fields. So I'm very excited to hear more about that. So I'm Elizabeth again. I'm the co-founder of Seismic. We are the talent matching platform for the life sciences. And my co-founders and I actually started in science. So we started our career in academia, moved into industry research, and notice the challenges that scientists face in finding positions that really fit their strengths and where they could be their most productive. And on the company side, as we got in, looked more into it, we noticed that on the company side, they also struggled to find the right scientists. So for me, I started Seismic because it was painful to watch so much scientific innovation stalled because of poor job fit and inefficient hiring practices. And I know for my co-founder, Danica, she did two postdocs before becoming the first hire in a biotech startup. And she noticed how a lot of important things like hiring and the time it takes away significant dollars and time from R&D. So she wanted to help biotechs push their R&D forward by effectively accessing a rich talent pool so that they could push their funding and innovations as far as it could go. And ultimately, Seismic is built by scientists. We are passionate about propelling innovation in the life sciences. And so this is our whole goal. And part of that is making sure the right talent gets to, jobs where they can be their most productive, and making sure that this talent has equal access to these jobs. So what do we do? Our mission is to help propel innovation by helping you as a company or a lab grow the right team to push your technology to the clinic or to the market. We help you access a diverse pool of qualified scientists to push your R&D forward. And we do this through our specialized skills matching and bias-free algorithm that's applied equally to our entire candidate community. And we engage the community by providing informational webinars and workshops to help companies and labs excel. And this is, we do everything from setting up an efficient hiring process to how to interview effectively, how to make sure that you're adopting inclusive hiring practices, and that kind of information for companies. So I wanted to present you the problem of what the biotech workforce looks like in the US. It's clearly not representative of the US population. So here you can see the percentage of the biotech workforce that is white, Hispanic, Black, Asian, and other. And you can see it's not reflective of the US population, which is shown in the blue bar to the very left. And then so the biotech workforce is shown in the red bar. So you can see Hispanics and Black Americans are very underrepresented in biotech. Hispanic and Black Americans make up 30%, over 30% of the US population, but only 13% of the biotech workforce. There's a lot of challenges to this. Some of it is making sure that Black and Hispanic communities have the same access to educational opportunities in STEM. Some of it is making sure that, yes, you actually are drawing in and having inclusive hiring practices that are drawing in different populations. And some of it is retention as well. Like once you actually hire someone, making sure that your company culture is set up in a way that is welcoming of different people that may not think like you or act like you or look like you. And so from Seismic's, what we work on is on the hiring process and on the inclusivity in hiring. And so that's what I'll talk about today. So how do we create inclusive hiring practices? And this is something, this is kind of a step-by-step guide we share with a lot of our companies. First, you have to begin with a diverse pool of scientists. Make sure your outreach programs when you're hiring are diversified. You're not just going after the same populations that you've always gone after. You want people that are not necessarily from a traditional background. And you don't want to just recruit your friends. This is something that happens a lot where a lot of people get hired on internal referrals without any other effort to look for someone who might be better matched for that job. Secondly, you want to create an inclusive job description. So we can go over some tips on how job descriptions can use inclusive language so that certain populations are not turned away from the job. You want to identify qualified scientists blind. So you don't want any factors that don't matter to the job to influence you in your decision. And then fourth, you want to implement ways to reduce bias in evaluation. So I'm just going to dive into each of these 4 points a little bit more. And of course, there's a lot to talk about and unpack here, but this is a brief overview and happy to answer questions at the end in the Ask a Question box or later at the networking session. So to make sure your outreach is broad, you want to make sure your company is being represented at different, online, in person, at career fairs, in professional organizations. So you want to make sure you have a broad outreach strategy. So you can attend career fairs at many schools to diversify the student bodies who learn about you, including HBCU career fairs. So these are historically Black colleges and universities in the US. Second, you can partner with professional organizations that focus on underrepresented scientists. So for example, Seismic is partnered with Association for Women in Science. You're also partnered with different scientific organizations that represent certain groups, certain populations within the scientific community. Partner with career offices at many different academic institutions. Use multiple sourcing channels. So again, not just going through internal referrals, not just going through one job board, making sure you have a good strategy to attract talent that might not see you under traditional outreach methods. And then promote your company among scientific communities. So at events, right now it's all virtual. So actually that is in some cases to your advantage that you can put on virtual events so that scientists can learn about your company without the cost of going somewhere. You can have access to, potentially thousands of people in virtual events. So this is actually something we actually use these 5 steps ourselves at Seismic in order to create a diverse pool or a diverse scientific community on Seismic. So you can see here, we are able to bring in scientists of all education levels, skill levels, and demographic backgrounds. Here you can see, 42% of our candidates are BSMS level, research associate level scientists. The rest are PhD. We do have a pretty good split of scientists coming between academia and industry. So 43% of our community is from industry already. 42% is currently in academia, and the remaining are entry level, so they just finished their degrees. We are about 50-50 male, female on Seismic, and then we are majority people of color. In terms of Hispanic and Black scientists on Seismic, I shared with you before that the workforce right now is 13%, and on Seismic we have about 20% of our scientists are Black and Hispanic. So the second piece of advice I shared was to create an inclusive job description. So when you're creating your job description, be aware of gender-coded language. So to the right, I've shared some examples of what is called male-coded and what is called female-coded. And you want to use a mix of these words to make sure you have a balance of these different words in your job description. So male-coded words are things like active, adventurous, assertive, ambitious. Female-coded words are things like agreeable, communal, collaborative, cooperative. So you want to make sure you have a mix of these words in your job description. And there's actually a site called textio.com that can help. If you copy paste your job description in it, they'll actually tell you whether it will be more appealing to males or females, or whether it's balanced. The second is decide on the priority skills you need to include in your job description. Men apply when they meet 60% of job requirements. Women apply when they meet 100% of job requirements. So this was an internal study done at the company. And this means that if you put a long laundry list of priority skills or skills in your job description, you're going to be turning candidates away who no longer see themselves in this job. And this is actually a common mistake that first time hiring managers make, is that they like the ideal candidate has all these things. Do they actually need all those things when they start out the job though? Like you want to actually identify, the 3 to 5 things that they actually need to come into the job with, make that your priority skills, and then make everything else preferred, or, something that they can grow into later. So think about the exact skills they need to bring value to the job right away, and then put those skills in. Because if you add too many skills, you are going to be turning away candidates who just lose sight of themselves as they're reading, of themselves in the job as they're reading the job description. Third, avoid jargon and slang. So this is particularly common in some fields where they're targeting, or they think they're targeting certain age groups, and they want to use like cool language. But it excludes, people who might be more experienced. If you use kind of very modern expression, or like very expressions that are, that's, I guess, sounds that you think sound cool. It also excludes candidates for whom English is not their first language, and they don't understand what you're saying. So they're like, oh, I shouldn't even apply to this job because I don't understand the way they communicate. And then also certain jargon, certain professional words that are very common in your industry may not be understood by entry-level candidates. So make sure if you have an entry-level job, that it can be understood by someone just coming out of college. Also understand the skill sets and qualifications in the candidate market. You want to make sure that what you're asking for is reasonable for the education level you're asking for and the experience level you're asking for. And then also related to that is determine your salary range. It does need to go in your job description, but you want to have an idea of what that salary range is to make sure that, again, the things that you're asking for this salary range are reasonable and comparable to what's in the market. So the third thing I said was identify qualified scientists blind. So you want to remove as much human bias as possible from your screening process. On Seismic, the way that it works is that, as a company, you would create a job profile while candidates create candidate profiles. and our system creates an automated match. So only candidates that meet your minimum requirements will be able to see the job. And if they're interested in the job, they'll apply. So on the company side or on the lab side, you only receive pre-screened applications from interested candidates. So you don't have to do the cold outreach, and you already know that they meet your minimum requirements, and you don't have to do, the 35 hours of screening that some companies do. And so on Seismic, we only take into account factors that will affect how well they are matched to the skill level and qualification level of your job. So other confounding factors are not taken into account, like name or school or previous place of work in our match. And so by the time they meet you, the applications reach you, they meet your skills requirements, and that this evaluation method was applied equally to our scientist community on Seismic. And then fourth, implement ways to reduce bias in evaluation. One way is to identify qualified scientists blind. If you have someone who can remove, if you have a team big enough and you have someone who can remove names and other unnecessary information from a resume, that's helpful. Or you can use Seismic, because that already takes that burden off the manual process. But you can also look at, what are ways I can reduce bias further in my evaluation process. And Seismic is actually conducting NIH-funded studies to determine key factors to reduce bias in candidate evaluation. So obviously, data collection is one of the most important parts of solving an issue, solving a problem. You need to know which factors are the most important, which ones you can address, and which ones are most important to address to change a situation. So for Seismic, we are looking at different parts of the candidate evaluation process and seeing what are ways we can remove human bias or delay human bias in the candidate evaluation process, so that more underrepresented scientists can reach the phone screen or can reach the interview or get hired. And we're looking at each step in the candidate evaluation process to see what we can do. And we have done some preliminary studies. We have compared Seismic and human recruiters. And we did find that Seismic actually does result in a greater percentage of underrepresented candidates being shortlisted compared to traditional hiring methods. And now we're looking into other ways we can delay introduction of biases in evaluation. So here are some of the results of Seismic. We are able to source for jobs 5 times more accurately than traditional methods. So 50% of our applicants are moved forward and called back, compared to 10% on general job boards. Companies tend to find the right candidate within 2 to 3 weeks instead of the normal time of 2 to 3 months. And companies can push more dollars to R&D because our costs are only as low as $3 to $5K per hire. And these are real world results of our hires through Seismic. So here I shared with you before, Black and Hispanic scientists make up 13% of the current biotech workforce, and 25% of hires made through Seismic have been underrepresented scientists. And scientists of color make up 37% of the biotech workforce, and 50% of hires through Seismic have been people of color. And here's just something that one of our candidates said about us: I could tell Seismic's matching system is skills-based. There are no human biases in the match excluding me from any relevant job opportunities that interested me. And this is someone who had felt that he had been excluded or not called back or not moved forward. And he strongly felt that it was because of his demographic information. And so he was able to find a job within 1 month of signing up for Seismic. So if you are interested in learning more, please get in touch with me at elizabeth@seismic.com. You can also ask a question and we'll address it at the end of the session. And now I will turn it over to Dr. Winston Morgan of University of East London.
Thank you. Okay, so let me just load my screen. So my focus is going to be on the challenges we face and perhaps some solutions. Now I'm getting some echo, some feedback. So can we sort that before I continue?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we can hear it too, actually.
Yeah,
Winston, do you want to try muting your own computer speakers so that you don't hear yourself echoing back?
I can't hear you.
Winston, we can't hear you. I think maybe are you muted now? No? Okay.
Yeah, so maybe if anyone, I don't know, if anyone had questions to Elizabeth, I have a few questions, but there may be other people having questions, and Elizabeth disappeared too. So.
Oh, I'm here.
Okay, so I can't see your video anymore. I don't know why.
I'm happy to answer questions though, as we figure out Winston's sound.
Okay, yeah, great. I was just wondering, because I mean, Seismic is really focused on biotech, biopharma. And I was wondering if you had thought of kind of expanding.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this technology is applicable to any job that requires technical expertise.
Yeah, I guess you started because you have the pool, right? And it's the pool that is kind of the reason that makes you different, like that makes it different for different fields, right?
How am I doing now?
Oh, we can hear you.
But I'm
happy to answer that later. Yep.
Yes, but I'm still echoing. It's really hard to talk when you're hearing yourself talk. Let me try switching off my speakers if I'm.
No. Do you have another earpiece? Maybe if you don't use your earpiece, maybe you have two tabs opened? No? Because maybe you still have the Edge opened? In the meantime, Elizabeth, maybe you can reply to the question. We can't hear you.
Yeah, so I think Seismic is applicable to any job that requires technical expertise in biotech, also in academia, and also in other fields as well.
Okay. Yeah, because you're mainly focused on industry, right? It's a bit, it's not just, I think that's why Winston's perspective was interesting, because it was also more focusing on academia.
Yeah.
And then we have another question. I think it's really interesting because we know that algorithm can also be biased. So when you say that it's interesting to introduce algorithms, someone is wondering what steps do you take to minimize the biases that go into the algorithms themselves?
Yeah, so we only match based on skills and qualifications alone. So one of the things we found with traditional hiring methods is that people do look at, past schools and past companies to shortlist candidates. And they sometimes do that because they don't actually understand the skill sets that are needed. And so our system actually knows how the skills are related to each other. So it eliminates that need to try to substitute other factors for skills. So that's one.
Right.
Yeah,
I've
okay.
rebooted. I don't know if you can hear me now. Is that any better?
We can hear
Perfect.
You can hear me? Right. Okay, let's go for it then. Sorry about that.
Awesome. No worries.
Okay, can you see my screen? Yes?
Not yet.
How about now?
Not yet.
But you can hear me.
Yeah. Elizabeth,
yes.
you had the slides. Would you like to show the slides?
Winston, would it be okay if I shared your slides?
Yes, as long as so would I need to?
Let me see. I will just share, and then I will try to go to the next slide along with you. How you're
All right.
All right.
Okay, there we go. That looks like I recognize those slides.
All right.
Okay. Except no, I can't see it because that might be the issue for me. Right. Can you see my slides now? This is really fun. Can you see me now? My slides?
Yes, I can.
Perfectly at last. So, as I said, my talk is about Black underrepresentation in UK scientific research generally, but I will also talk a little about what's happening in the USA. What I want to do is basically us to have a better understanding of the challenge we're facing and what we can do about it. So I am Winston Morgan. I'm a reader in toxicology and clinical biochemistry, and I've been doing scientific research in the UK for about 25 years and teaching in universities and that kind of thing. So that's where I'll be speaking from my experience in this area. But given the time of year, I thought what I'd do is talk about the Nobel Prize, because this is a time of year when we talk about the Nobel Prize, and Nobel Prizes are awarded. So, and how does that what does that mean in reality? So after about 100 years, there has not been a Black Nobel laureate in science. And during that time, as you can see, there have been 950 laureates, 616 in science, but none have been a Black. Now, how surprising and relevant is that is what we're going to explore. How important is it? So if we think of the world population, about 1.2 billion people out of a population of 7.7 billion are described as Black, which is about 15%. So you'd think there'd be roughly at least say 10, even 5% of, if you like, of the scientists, Nobel laureates would be Black, but not necessarily. So if we look at some other data, in terms of Nobel laureates generally, one of the things we find is that there've only been 16 Black Nobel laureates. Most of them have been awarded for the Peace Prize, 3 for literature, 1 for economics, but none for science. So these percentages are really, really small and quite surprising when you think about it. So this isn't just a problem for science, it's a problem for society, wider society. When we look at other Nobel Prizes for underrepresented groups, if we think of, for example, Asians make up about 60% of the world's population, but again, only about 8.5% of the laureates in science. So although Asians are doing better, it's not as great as you might think. Similarly, women who make up about just under 50% of the world's population, again, only 5.7% of the Nobel laureates have been women. So what we're seeing is certain groups are not represented in science, and the highest, if you like, representation or expression of success in science is the Nobel Prize. And just to give you a final thing on this, the overall Nobel Prize gap, if you like. So for women, it's about 40%, 43%. For Asians, it's about 51.6%. And surprisingly for Blacks, it's only about 13.3%. So much smaller. Not as bad as the situation as you might think. Anyway, so let's have a look at what's going on. So, and what's worrying if you're a Black scientist or you're interested in having more Black scientists. And things that happened recently, like the COVID-19 issue and the fact that more Blacks are affected by COVID than perhaps any other group, both in America and in the UK. So there's something going on there. So, but since 2000, the year 2000, Asian scientists have been increasing. So we can see an increased trajectory. There may not be many in the past, but there is an increased trajectory amongst Asian scientists. Similarly, women, the same kind of thing. But what I can't see, sadly, a similar pattern of increase, if you like, representation for Black African or Black American or even Black European scientists in terms of success and representation. And so let's ask the question why. And the main problem is around, if you like, getting into the system in the first place. So my colleagues already talked about the USA population. So I'm just going to briefly go over this. So if you see, the Asian population is about 6%, Black population is about 14%, Hispanic about 20%. But if we look at people, because remember, all of this will start at school and then university. And if you just look at this central column, what you can see is that Black students who complete the degrees they started on is only 29%, whereas if you compare them to their white counterparts, it's nearly 50%. Similarly, after a period of 6 years, you can see almost half the Blacks who enter the university are no longer enrolled. So there's an issue both in the UK, as we'll see later, as well as in the USA, where Black students, first of all, don't get into university. When they get into university, they tend not to survive and last the course for lots of different structural reasons. Similarly, at postgraduate level, because if you're going to be a working scientist, normally you will be expected to have a graduate degree. And again, you can see from this chart, I'm going to go through it really quickly, but the fact is you can see, think of those population representatives I gave you earlier on. You can see, for example, Black doctoral holders, you can see Black men and women, they're much less than 5%. So again, that's showing you that there's a significant underrepresentation at doctoral level in these areas. So there's no point in saying we don't have any scientists working in industry or in universities if they're not able to get doctoral degrees. And again, this is another one looking at the actual STEM jobs. And if we look at, for example, in things like engineering, this green one, this light green one, you can see again, Blacks, 5% of the population, life sciences, which is what we were talking about earlier, 4.4% of the population. So what we can see, again, a great underrepresentation in this area. And this is a reflection of the fact that not enough people are coming in. But it's more than that. There are other issues that we need to talk about. For example, so the majority of Blacks in STEM jobs have experienced discrimination. If you look at whites who experience discrimination, is much less than Blacks or Hispanics or even Asians. So one of the problems is that once someone is in the industry, they're constantly having to fight not just getting into the industry, but also discrimination, which will impact on their ability to, if you like, get into senior positions. And it is at those senior positions that you're then going to be able to make changes, both in the type of research that is done, but also who's employed. So if we look at the situation in the UK, unlike the USA, there's a much smaller Black population in the UK, about 4%. Asian population is about 8%. And again, if we look at what's happening in terms of universities again, so here if we look at Black students in universities, they're actually there's overrepresentation, if you like, in universities in terms of Black students. But in terms of them continuing on their programs, just as in America, compared to white, you can see there's a bigger dropout rate. And if you even go to those who are no longer in university, you can see 6.8% versus 11%. So the same kind of issues in the UK around dropping out of university. And also then, if you do finish your university, again, you can't, I don't know if you can see this one, you can see there's what we call an awarding gap. Because in order to go from university into the best jobs, to the best research postgraduate research posts, you need the top degrees. They're called first and two ones. And as you can see, about over 80% of white students will attain these degrees or will be awarded these degrees, whereas it's much less for Black students, significantly less than 60%. So the fewer students who attain these top degrees, the less chance they'll have of going on to these important jobs. One of the areas you flourish in university and then you flourish, if you like, in industry is to do first, perhaps initially, an academic job. And if you look at this table, it looks quite complicated initially, but it's not that. All I'm showing you is academic staff by ethnicity. So again, in universities, generally, about 91% of all academic staff are white, whereas remember we said there's 4% in the population, but only 1.2% of the academic staff in university are Black. And we can see a similar pattern for Asian, remember 8%. And when you look at the highest level, again, these decision makers, these gatekeepers, both in terms of who's going to do doctoral degrees, who are going to be promoted up the scale, again, what you can see is that less than 1% of those senior positions, those senior professorial positions or heads of departments, they're going to be black. And if you don't have these key people, it's not going to happen. So what we're seeing is a clear pattern. And I was going to talk to you about how this occurred. In fact, I think I still will do that. I know we're running out of time. But this is just looking at the process. This is job applications for a professorial post. These are senior posts, but a similar pattern you'll see whether for almost any post in STEM. And what you'll find is, if you look at your whites compared to your BME, this is just an overall grouping of black and Asians and that kind of thing. What you'll find is, as you go from applying for a job to being shortlisted to being appointed, what you'll see is that the rate goes down. So you started with 26% for BME or black and Asian groups, and by the time you're appointed, it's down to 10%, whereas for white groups, 73%, and it goes up. So there's this filtering process during, even so, if you think you can apply for a job, you apply for the job, you're less likely to be shortlisted, and if you go to that shortlisting and you're interviewed, you go through the process, you're still less likely to be appointed. And all of these things have an impact. So in the HE sector as a whole in the UK, there are over 300 missing, or if you like, a shortage of 300, the very senior academic positions, and if you like, another 2,000 of the more general academic positions in universities up and down the UK. And this is a significant, this will have a significant impact in how students, remember we talked about the fact that there's a high dropout rate and also a failure to get enough students getting the highest degrees. All of these, if you like, shortages are going to play a role in that. So what are the challenges facing society in the UK and USA? We see that not enough bright young black people are studying science at university. If they do study science, they're less likely to achieve the higher grades and therefore less likely to progress to research careers. Even if they make it into academia or into industry, they get a job, they're going to be on short-term contracts. That's something I didn't mention. So their positions are much more vulnerable. So when there's a crisis, for example, we've lost a lot of people as a result of the COVID. A lot of those will be BME academics. They'll be the first to lose their jobs. They're also less likely to be promoted. And fewer black academics, as I said, in those key, if you think of places like Harvard and Princeton or UCL and Imperial and Oxford and Cambridge in the UK, they're the ones where they're the important places to do research and they feed industry. You're going to find fewer black academics in these institutions for lots of structural reasons again. So the cost to society is wide, but there's going to be an economic cost to society because there's going to be this, if you like, this on the utilization of individuals. So that will have an economic cost. You can look at medical costs if you think of what's happening around COVID, but also societal costs. Think of all the protests, Black Lives Matter, all that kind of thing. So there are big costs for society by not addressing these issues. The other important point is that a lot of these issues aren't just limited to science or police. It's a wider societal thing that we have to address. I'm going to quickly move on again and say, what can we do about it? The way to do that, if you like, is when you try to address these problems, you need to look at, if you like, inequality in terms of the initial pipeline. So the initial pipeline, but also once an initial pipeline, I should have said, is about academia, universities, that kind of thing, and then employment. And once you're employed, and then promotion. So we need to tackle these things. Sorry, this slide is not what it was meant to be. There's clearly some errors in it, but I hope I've made that point. So what we find is that in order to address these issues, we need to have more research-intensive universities. They must offer more places to black students. So all our top universities, both in North America and in the UK, they have to offer more places to black students. They're there, they're qualified, they're just not getting in. Once they're in these universities, tutors in these universities need to challenge their own biases about black students, particularly in doing science, and that will explain why they're not progressing at the rates and they're dropping out, or they're not being awarded the highest degrees. And also researchers must also be prepared to include black students in their research groups. So one of the ways you do science is that you're invited by key researchers to join their research groups. If that doesn't happen, they're not going to become scientists. They're not going to become researchers. In terms of the employment, there's a big issue around privilege. And what we really need to do is transfer privilege from those who currently have it and have always benefited from it to those who don't have it. The problem with that is privilege. For those with privilege, equality is seen as a zero-sum game. That is, if you offer some of your privilege to someone else, you feel that you will have to lose some of your privilege. So what we need to do, if you like, is widen the net, widen the economy, widen the scope, so that some people can give up some of their privileges without feeling that they're losing out completely. That's going to be really important. So the final question I want to leave you with is that, as things stand, is there space in academia and in industry to accommodate Black representation? Because what it requires is for people to create that space to allow those people, to allow us, if you like, to move in. So thank you very much. I'm really sorry about the technical problems and the rush, but I hope I can answer any of your questions.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Winston. No worries. It's always difficult, especially when you're the only one in front of your computer.
yes, sorry, it's great. Yes, I really had to rush through that. Yeah, so okay. So I hope I sort of got the message across. I don't know if I did or not. Okay.
I think it's no, it was really interesting to show the UK and the US. I think it's quite different issues, but still
different but the same. But in both cases, we're not getting enough, as I said, people into the system. Once they're in the system, they're not progressing through, because you're not going to become a working scientist to apply for the jobs that Elizabeth's been talking about if you haven't graduated or you haven't graduated with a good degree, and you get the references as well, because even things like that are going to be important.
Yeah, so I have one question from Amajit, who is asking, who are the gatekeepers in institutions making these decisions about professorship, do you think?
Who are they?
Yeah.
Well, if you're going to appoint a professor, you're going to appoint someone who looks like you, who comes from the same background like you, who thinks like you, someone who you think is going to, if you like, work closely with you. And so people tend to appoint. It's not this is not a thing unique to academia. People tend to appoint people who look like them, sound like them, because you're investing, if you like, in someone. So if you can't believe that person because of stereotypes, biases about certain groups, if you've never seen a black scientist in a position like mine, for example, you're not going to employ me, because you're going to think, it's not going to work. So the gatekeepers are the people who are there. The other thing is, as I said, it's this idea of that there are a limited number of these posts. And so in order for one person to come in, someone has to be removed. And that's a really difficult thing to accommodate. So we need, if you like, government and these largest, particularly in the USA, they have large funds. They really need to expand their funds to actually widen the, if you like, the positions and posts, so that more people can come in.
I see, yeah. So we have Erato, who says, thank you, Winston. I and my colleagues in the publishing organization I work for, and the question disappeared. Thank you. Embarked on a mission to diversify our journal's editorial boards of editors and board members. What else should we do to tackle the issue of underrepresentation?
Well, I mean, you can go to some of the things that Elizabeth has spoken about how you, for example, how you advertise, where you advertise, how your interviews, the kind of questions you ask, and having external consultants who can actually help you on your, perhaps doing more blind advertising and shortlisting and that kind of thing. But as we see, even sometimes when people are shortlisted, they still have to go through these hurdles. Perhaps Elizabeth, I don't know if you want to come in and add something there.
Yeah, I think some of the inclusive hiring practices I shared earlier are helpful. It certainly will get more people to the callback and interview stage, and we've seen it take people all the way to the hiring stage. But beyond that, there is also a retention piece. Winston was mentioning earlier about the opportunities for promotion, or people are recruited at contract positions rather than full-time positions.
Yes.
And that. That's something that you can look at your company culture to really understand how is our culture set up in a way where people with different ideas can have a voice and different perspectives can have a voice. So, I mean, even things like looking at, what is your company's, what are your company policies around diversity? What does your board of directors look like? What does the senior staff look like? Is there an effort? Is there an initiative, like a written initiative, to make sure that they're making an effort to get more women or more underrepresented people people who are not represented in the industry into those positions. And if not, ask why not. This is something you can,
one of the things,
feel secure in your position, bring up to your, supervisors. But yes, sorry, go ahead, Winston.
No, I was just going to say, one of the things that a lot of companies will have the policies, the equality policies, but they don't have the people to implement and to audit and to check and to challenge. So that's something that you might also consider, employ someone specifically to do that, to challenge the managers at a very senior level to say, right, yes, here's our policy on equality, but we're not actually doing it. So it's have the policy, but audit the policy and have someone to challenge that you're actually doing it.
Actually, we've reached the 45 minutes, so I don't know if we want to continue to close the session now.
I can go on for a few more minutes. I don't mind if people have questions.
We have another question, actually. So someone's asking, the transfer rates for Black students in the UK is much higher than white students. Do you have any ideas what is causing that?
Well, as I said, students will feel either they're not progressing, and so they feel that they've been asked to leave, or the environment they're in, perhaps there are not enough Black academics around, so they feel isolated, so they transfer to another university. That's what seems to happen. Students, if they're happy with their course and their environment and their tutors, they will remain, and they'll be successful. If they're not happy with either of the things I've just mentioned, they will tend to leave, or they'll be unfortunately they'll fail their programs, and then they might transfer for that reason. Yeah, so it's as simple as that.
Okay, thank you. And I think that might be a bit for Elizabeth, but maybe Winston, you can reply also. Is this issue worse in industry? In the US, I've seen greater and greater efforts to recruit inclusively in academia.
I don't know the exact numbers for academia, actually. I think, Winston, you shared them earlier. I don't think it's worse in industry, actually. That's my initial impression. There's a lot of efforts to recruit inclusively in industry as well. They're just not, they're just a little bit behind the curve, I think, as the research field is a little bit behind the curve.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Winston, do you remember what the figures are for Black and Hispanic representation in the US for academia?
For academia, not off the top of my head, no. But whatever, there's clearly an underrepresentation. What you find is this kind of pyramid. So where there are larger numbers, so that's the other thing you need to think about. When people look at the numbers, they'll see high numbers or reasonable numbers in certain industries or in academia. But when you actually go into those organizations and have a look, most of those people will be at the lower levels in those organizations. So it's not just about having the numbers, you have to have them at the right places in the organization for the reasons I explained previously. You need those sort of change makers and gatekeepers at the senior positions. And what you find is these people are going to influence their white colleagues simply by, as I said, by having a Black or an Asian colleague that you hadn't even considered before. When you then look at another Black person who's applied for a job, you think, all right, they might be like this great person that already works for us. Whereas if you've never had that person in your organization, you're not, you're not going to know that. Yeah, but it's a similar pattern because, sorry, I keep going on. Academia will feed industry. So if it's happening in academia, it's going to be happening in industry. Yeah,
that's a very good point. And finally, do you think industries need a diversity and inclusion checklist, or should this be more of an organic process that could be gotten to with more training?
I think that it needs to come from the top, and there needs to be a there needs to be a formal strategy on how to diversify and how to make sure you're being inclusive in your promotion strategies and your hiring strategies. In terms of checklists, I think it is good to have metrics of, are our strategies working? I think from talking to, senior people in the industry, that if people feel forced to adopt these measures, it's they get, there's a different reaction around these efforts than if there's a strategy and there's a goal, but it's not necessarily a checklist that's presented. I don't know if Winston has more.
Yeah, well, I would say what you need, there's a, I always make a business case of why this needs to be done in industry. There's been lots of studies which show industries who have a diverse workforce and takes these issues really seriously, they are far more successful. Because remember, if you think of, I was showing that chart about, for example, if you take the Asian population, for example, they're a world majority population. So if you're in industry, you want to make lots of money and that kind of thing, you need to understand and have people from those cultures in your industry. So there's a strong business case, never mind the equality, the social justice case. There's a strong business case for doing this because you will simply make more money doing it. And that's how I tend to say people should be thinking about it.
Yeah,
I think that's a good way to say it.
Yeah. And now is a good time to do it, given all the awareness that we've been seeing recently, for people to look at your companies. Because we're sorry, I know I shouldn't probably go on, but we're looking at for example, the criminal justice system, all the politicians, and what are they doing? But scientists and academia and research, we should also be having these discussions about how are we faring in these situations? How equal is our processes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it was really good. I was really happy to have you both presenting. I think you made a good case for the issues that are here, and I really hope that things will change. Like you say, this is really the moment to make things change. So
yes,
thanks a lot.
Thanks, Winston.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.